you're growing up from a young man to being an adult man, you kind of have this built up impression of what you think marriage looks like because you're basing it off of the people that were in your direct proximity and talking to you. And what I found was the opposite with women. They grow up with this fairy tale of marriage. Like they dream of being married and it's going to be beautiful. And so I think both perspectives are like misaligned. And so then when you come together, it really does take a lot of work on the foundation. And it's like, we got to rebuild this thing up the right way.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Today for Tomorrow podcast. You already know I'm here with the fellas. We got Mr. Michael Wright, Mr. Dr. The Process, the Daily's Process.
The coach.
And then we got Pastor Rodney Kemp from the Freedom in Christ Ministry. Y'all already know what it is. But today, I mean, I know, you know what? This is what I'll do. The title of this episode, if you've already saw it, because you probably saw it, that's probably the reason that you're here right now. Men, this is why your wife will never be good enough. Just that, fellas, what comes to mind?
Man, that's dynamite.
Dynamite.
First comes to mind is, hey, I'm happy with my wife. I mean, I think I'm blessed, to be honest with you. So I can't even answer that question, to be honest, and go home. But I can't answer that question.
We want fellas to be able to go home after this for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm happily married myself, so I can't relate to the question per se. But the thing that comes to mind is just that when I think of, in the sense of the world, comparison is the thief of joy, right? And I think anytime that you're comparing what you have to what you could have in your mind, and you feel like what you have is not enough, I think you have to come back to self and then do some very careful analysis, because what you think, you're comparing it to may not be actually what you think it is.
And
you know what I'm saying? So
yeah. So the reason that I use those words particularly in this title is onto your point, this whole idea of comparison. It might not, I'm not saying anything about your actual wife. Don't send no hate mail over here. I'm not talking about your actual wife. But what I'm saying is this is like a mindset issue in the actual male. Because like you said, there's always stuff out there, especially with the internet, social media. You can scroll all day, look at there's a million different model pages, there's a million different twerk pages, there's a million different people on the planet that you can compare the person that you're with to. And one thing that I know for sure, just like you were saying, is like every time you make that comparison, every time, if you even entertain the idea of making that comparison, now you're looking at what the person that you're with lacks, instead of working with them as they are so that they can be everything that you need them to be.
Yeah.
It's like not like and I don't say that in a way that like you need to change the person you're with, because you won't. They will have to do whatever it is that they are going to do. They're going to have to do it themselves. But it's a situation where, because you're thinking about this other person who isn't the person next to you, you're thinking that they can be them, but they won't ever be them, because they weren't meant to be them. They're meant to be who they are. And so if you can't be comfortable with the person who you're with, who that person actually is, then you'll always have issues. Your wife will never be good enough.
I'm just going back in time before I got married, when I was dating. So to frame this question, kind of going along the lines you talked about, Martell, is, the mindset, at least at that time for me, was like kind of along the lines of what you were saying. I would date somebody and I'm like, you're trying to build this woman to be who you want her to be, like the pieces, right? And you want, be like, well, if she had that, and she had that, and she had her personality, And that goes back to the comparison piece. But one thing I found though, at least for me, and this is because I saw myself never getting married when I was in my 20s. I said, I'm not doing it. But what happened?
You'll have to unpack that why, but go ahead.
Well, no, I'll tell you why, because, and it's going to go back to my answer too. The reason why is because I didn't see myself being, committed enough. I saw, I saw myself to that point, that comparison piece, letting that get in the way and me trying to chase something else. But what happened was is that I had to look in the mirror. I had to understand that I was a problem. Okay. I had to understand, and really what happened, God had to get me right. So I had to take a real hard look at Rodney, understand my issues, and that the reason why I'm trying to build this perfect woman is because I was a problem. I was imperfect. And I wanted something to fit me. I was, and then when that happened, I realized when I met my wife and we got to the point where this is the one. And throughout marriage, I always remind myself, like, hey, I got everything I need at home. And you gotta make that decision in your head. You gotta understand you got everything you need at home.
That's a fact. And when you said that, Rodney, I get it though, because to be honest, I was kind of the same way, but it was more so, I always thought about the kid, like the family with the kids, but for some reason, I never fully thought about marriage. And a part of that, we were just keeping it real, a part of that was, our environment. Even when we see marriages is kind of the way we were taught, at least I'll speak for me, and the men that were around me, it was almost kind of, you heard about the negative things more than the positive things.
Yeah.
And so when you're growing up from a young man to being an adult man, you kind of have this built up impression of what you think marriage looks like because you're basing it off of the people that were in your direct proximity and talking to you. And what I found was the opposite with women. They grow up with this fairy tale of marriage. Like they dream of being, married and it's going to be beautiful. And so I think both perspectives are like misaligned.
Yeah.
And so then when you come together, it really does take a lot of work on the foundation and just trying to unpack some of the things that we've heard in our past or our perspectives on how we feel. And it's like, we got to rebuild this thing up the right way.
The beauty of this conversation is we've got 3 different generations here. And to speak to that, for those that don't know, I'm not married. I don't have a wife. But the thing is, and I don't know, so there's some dude, his name is probably Charles. I'm not attacking all the Charles, but I'm attacking you, Charles. There's some dude who's like, he a kid, he ain't even married. What he got to say about, look, the thing is, so I'm dating right now. I'm in a serious relationship. And if I let this comparison issue jump in now, I will never get to that married point.
Yeah.
One of the biggest reasons that people get divorced, like this is on record, you can look this up, is infidelity.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a big factor in infidelity is I've got my eyes too much on other things that aren't with me right here. I've got my eyes on things that are outside of what I actually should have.
Yeah.
And so like for me at this stage right now, I have to come, I've had to come to the realization that the idea that I might have had as a teenager or as or younger of what I thought a relationship was going to be like, not having been in a serious relationship before and not being married, not having, the experience of an ex-wife, I have to understand that like my idea as a kid of what a relationship was going to be like and who I was going to be with and how the story was going to play out and how we were going to get to this point together and do X, Y, and Z, it was unrealistic. When I was a kid, man, if I had to, because, I've heard this before where people think about, well, if God asked you, if you have a conversation with God and God just what came up to you and said, all right, so son, tell me everything you want in a wife. And then you know, the guy, he lists out every single thing, like, you know, I want her to have, I want her to be doing this with her life. I want her to be doing this kind of stuff when she's at home. I want to have this many kids, and I want this and this and this, and she should be interested in this and this and this. A lot of teenagers end up with a picture of a boy in reality, but no, for real. But for me, it was always like, I ended up, when I mark out that list just being real, it ends up just looking like somebody who is just stupid similar to me. But what I found out was, getting to this relationship, the person that I'm with now, her name is Aisha, and she's absolutely amazing, but she is not what I thought about a relationship before. But what I've come to realize is that this has been a lot better than my imaginary thought of it, because, and some people don't have this opportunity to kind of see what you thought you wanted versus what actually is good for you, because there's oftentimes a difference between the two. What I've realized in this is that this building process is a part of it. This building process is a part of, you know, making the relationship what is going to be a good thing for you and the other person, because essentially when you're coming up with that list of things that you want, that's a selfish list. And it doesn't really factor in what's going to be needed, what's going to be required to make it work between two people. And so the whole comparison issue, it comes in when I stop realizing that the relationship is a collaborative effort, and I start thinking too much about what they're not doing, what they don't have, and what I wish I had based on all these other things. But the reality is, those other things, they might not be for you, and they might not work with you. And the things that you might have had in your head about what you might have wanted or would have worked out, they might not play out to be anything good anyways. And so it's like, when I spend too much time on the other stuff, I always inevitably will neglect the things that I have. And the thing is, when you find, and Mike, you've talked about this, and I'm going to ask you a question about it. One thing that you always talk about is buying right the first time. Like when it comes to real estate, it's like, if you didn't buy right the first time, then you will inevitably run into issues. So spend the time in the beginning process before you actually make that final decision. In this context, it will be marriage. Spending that time making sure that this is actually the right one, making sure that you actually have the right intentions about it, and making sure you're going into it with the right attitude, because then you'll be able to reap the benefits of it.
Yeah. Definitely. That was a lot of great points. So speaking to the buying right analogy, it's spot on. Whoever told you that, he knew a little something about a little something. But the point is, it makes me think about, like, so when I get younger folks, and they kind of ask me about, like, man, you've been married for 10 years, like, what do you think? What should I do? What should I look for? I'm like, to be honest, this is my biggest piece of advice. Spend the majority of your time, especially in your 20s, working on yourself. Like, for real. Like, I really almost feel like, to be honest, if I would give my advice, this is Mike's opinion, it's not like law or anything, I think your 20s are for yourself. As a man, you should spend the time just working on yourself, trying to balance yourself out, figuring out your blind spots, talking to men that are in the position that you want to be in, just getting their opinions, analysis, and viewpoints. Because if you're talking about something for a lifetime, what is another few years gonna, what's the difference versus jumping into a marriage where now you're responsible for more than yourself. You're responsible for your wife. You're responsible for your kids. Everything, you're the leader of that household. And if you're not ready, you're bringing everybody with you along for your ride, still trying to figure things out. And admittedly, I've learned some of this stuff the hard way. I'll just be real, just me and my personal. I'm not ashamed to say, like, I learned a lot after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm saying that, I'm saying it like, you know what? I wasn't fully. I thought. Well, to be honest, I didn't even think I was. Even at the time when I proposed, it was more so like, I'm thinking, all right, cool. I'm 26. I was traveling, and I'm like, all right, let me lock her down because I don't want anybody else to be with her. I know that. I know that.
Oh yeah, that's real.
I didn't know I was fully ready, but I don't want nobody else to be with her. So like, let me lock her now. But what I didn't realize is that moment, she was like, I'm ready tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa. I'm like, I had to take a step back, like, and that's where I'm like, man, I mean, like literally the next day, I realized I was in a little bit deeper than I realized. That I initially thought. So just to bring all of this full circle, I did buy right though. That's the one thing I will say. And it wasn't even, I tried to take it out of my hands. It's not what was eye-catching to me at 25, 26, because I'm going to go for all the wrong things. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't fully developed. And what I tell a lot of the young brothers is what you're attracted to in a girlfriend may not be the same thing that you need as a wife, life partner, a life mate. And so that's the part where you really got to understand that we're going back to the real estate analogy is like, if I'm single, 25, living good, I might want that downtown loft,
really?
Overlooking the skyline. That's beautiful. But if I'm thinking of, I need a I'm building this for my family one day. I want to be fruitful and multiply. Maybe you do need that big house. Even if you're not ready for it now, it's a good deal. Go ahead, buy it right because you can grow into that. Yeah. It all comes back to where do you see yourself at? Where do you feel you want to grow into? And then work backwards, create a plan.
Yeah, listen to both of you guys. I mean, you're right. That buy right piece is right on point. And I don't know who said it. Maybe you said it, Martell. Like,
I said that. Mike said it. Mike told me it, and I just said it.
Yeah, and I think
that was yours. That's my quote.
Yeah, and I think the other piece too, and I'll use it too. But the other piece too is that getting yourself right, Mike. When you was talking about, and I kind of. Just personally, me, I had to get my head right. I think I shared a little earlier in the conversation. And the other piece, man, that selfish piece. When we talk about we want a woman this way, that way, and I think Martell, you alluded to this too, is like it's that list you make is really all about your selfish desires.
Mm-hmm.
And when you find the right person, and look, God got to do it for you because it really do it. God, and it doesn't. Just because you find the right person don't mean it's going to be blissful throughout. It's going to take investment. Going back to property again. You can buy the right house, but if you don't invest in it, it's going to crumble.
Yeah.
If you don't fix what's wrong with it, it's not going to last. It might look good today, and but if you ain't taking care of it, pretty soon you ain't going to be able to live in it. And marriage the same way. If you don't take care of your marriage, if you don't invest in it, if you don't spend the time to understand what it needs, then, it's not going to be rewarding. It's not going to be the house you want it to be. Every once in a while you need to redecorate. And I'm going to use marriage like this. Every once in a while you need to make sure you dating your wife. You need to make sure that you making her feel loved. You got to put her first. And, if you were the right one, she going to do the same for you and you become one. So,
That's a critical element, Rodney. You hit the nail right on the head where you have to invest in it. At the end of the day, man, because I hear a lot of brothers, and I'm not attacking my brothers, but I got to keep it real for a second. I hear a lot of brothers complaining and, she not doing this, she not doing that. And I feel you. Like, I mean, I get it. It's times where it's going to be like that. And it's okay to talk to a brother and vent a little bit, but it's a difference in venting for a productive outcome versus just venting to talk yourself into doing something that you wanted to do anyways. Two different things.
Yeah.
And because ultimately, as leaders in our households, if we bought right, we got the right one because we did our analysis up front. We got to put in the work to invest in it and make this thing fruitful.
Yeah.
It starts with us. If you have, like Rodney said, if you got the right woman, y'all are going to work together and figure this thing out along the way. There's going to be times where she may need to put in 90 and you may be putting in 10. Now, you know, I'm not talking monetarily and anything like that, but just she may pull you to the finish line. It's going to be times where you're doing 100. It feels like she doing 0. You know, that's what a team is about. It's one body. It's one body. You guys cleave together. And that's the part where it's a very unselfish act. And that's why I say you have to have a certain level of maturity to understand, like, the sacrifice that comes with it.
Yeah.
But it's also, it can be beautiful too. That's another thing because, like I said, when I was coming up, I felt that the narrative was based on a lot of men's personal opinion. And when I look back, I think a big part of this was men didn't have an outlet to vent. They didn't have anybody to talk to. So when you're in the barbershop, you're hearing them complain, they have all this built up aggression and rage because they didn't have a place where they could do like what we're doing right now. Just talking, letting it out. So by the time, if you talk to your brothers, we go like Men 2.0, we sit and it might be a brother tell a story about, you know, him and his wife. And then we like, man, I feel you, me and my wife, we went through the same thing. And then we kind of laugh, we joke, we give each other advice. And by the time we leave, it's cool. It's like a weight this man lifted off. We might say, like Rodney told me the other day, hey man, don't forget to get your wife some flowers. I said, man, I appreciate that, brother. I appreciate it because I may have been thinking about something else. Not that I don't want to just give my wife some flowers, but you need other brothers to you know, don't forget this, like watching your blind spots.
Yeah.
But if you got the wrong brothers around you, they'll be telling you the wrong things.
You're like, you don't need her, bro, Ham.
You don't need her. Go get you another one. Go get you 2 more.
Yep.
You know, it's just, that's the reality.
Yo, so I understand that again, I won't stay. I know that the majority of people listening are more so in the I've already bought, so there ain't no going back type of situation. So I'm gonna only touch on this for a brief moment. Like, one thing that I think is really interesting is this whole dating process. Because like you said, like it's so important that you buy right. But I feel like the majority and a lot of the dudes that I know and my homies from high school, like they kind of rush, and especially around this like 25, 26, 27, 24 age range, you see people getting married left and right. They're like, so-and-so's getting married, there's a wedding to go to. So Susie just got married, there's a wedding to go to. And so then when you're in a relationship, and I've had to talk to this with my lady, it's like when you're in a relationship and you hear all these people getting married, it like internally, it kind of puts, if you don't really break it down for what it really is, it kind of will put like a pressure on you, like, oh, well, maybe should we get married? Should I be thinking about getting married right now? And if you're around a bunch of married people, which I am, as you can see, I'm around dudes who I've already gotten married. So it's in the back of your mind, like, oh, shoot, well, I guess marriage is probably the thing to do because everybody else is doing it and it just makes sense. But one thing that I've talked about with my lady in particular that we had to establish from the very beginning is I refuse to rush. We will go through everything that we need to go through beforehand. And as long as you and I are willing to go through this thing together and go through all the weeds, figure all the things out, and make sure that we are making the right decision, not having all of the answers, but knowing enough to know that it's going to work. And it's not going to backfire on us in a year from now or 10 years from now, then, okay, we can make this thing happen. I think it's so interesting. You said she's not doing this or she's not doing that. It's like, one thing that I've had like conversations about, there's like, right now, what's really interesting in like the millennial group, hot topic is how females are dogs these days, how dudes are dogs these days. And so you'll get a whole lot of conversations hearing about like the dating world, the streets, the streets is filthy, my man. The streets are absolutely disgusting. And it's like, because everybody's got this mentality where it's like, well, because I am this person, because I'm so special, because I've got X, Y, and Z going on in my life, homie better be making at least 6 figures, or she better be at least cooking and cleaning, and I bet not have to say nothing about it. And it's like, my man, you got the wrong idea.
Well, that and what you bring it up is no different than my time and Mike's too, in a way. Things might be a little different in how people communicate, but the same misconceptions, the same attitude has always been there. But man, it goes back to that where we started out, that whole comparison thing. So it goes back to making sure we understand who we are, what we are, and that, you know, we got to be ready for it. As men, let's be honest, as men, we don't mature as fast as women do. And we don't deal with things the same.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, hey, that's the reality of it. So, you know, that whole giving thing, if somebody say their wife not good enough, it's usually because they not giving enough.
Ooh, say it. Ooh, say that. Say that.
Yeah, I mean,
Rodney, you mean to tell me that it could be me as the problem?
Man, usually the problem starts in the mirror. It does. And I'm not saying that there's no issues there. I'm not saying that hey, a person's wife might not be part of the problem. Yeah, definitely. But it starts in the mirror. If you don't fix what's in the mirror, you're not gonna fix what's in the mirror.
And that goes to both sides though.
Yeah,
so women, we got any women listening, y'all got to look in the mirror too though. So don't think because we getting on the brothers that this is just a pass for you guys. And, oh yeah, you heard that, brother? The brothers, they said that y'all got to get y'all act together. Nah, y'all got to look in the mirror too. And it's funny because as you were talking, Martell, it made me think of, that's what Brother Keon was talking about with the speaking event that we have coming up called He Say, She Say. And it's basically where it's almost like this division between our women and our men, right? It's a little strange for me just kind of looking and seeing what's going on, because the thing is, we got to come together, and it has to be the individuals with the right mindset. It has to be high caliber individuals. Now, if you're trying to vibe with someone that's low level or low caliber of thinking, it's not going to ever look right.
Yeah.
And you got to be real with yourself. And I will say this. I mean, I'm not in the dating world right now. And I think, with this social media, it's a lot more that, you guys have to deal with. I will still say, a lot of this starts with the men, but I do think it's a different type of women now where, because I'm just looking at the music even, like, it's just, the progression of the music is
oh my
crazy.
God.
It's like some of the stuff that, and I'm not like a square type dude, so it's not, I grew up listening to rap, Tupac was my favorite, so it's not like I'm not used to hearing like music, but I listen like all this City Girls and
oh my goodness,
all this. Yeah, it's just like the stuff they say is crazy. And then you see the women, they're like, yeah, they're rapping and the more you say something to yourself and you say it out loud, it becomes of you. And I think that's a big part of the issue. But the music is a reflection of a lot of their mindset. Yeah. So it's just like, it's like a vicious little cycle that everything's, in right now. And the only way I could say what we got to do is we all got to be more spiritually grounded. We all got to get, deep into that word. And we definitely have to come together with the brothers and the sisters.
Yeah.
We gotta come together and we gotta have healthy, productive conversations. Because, I say this in a few of the podcasts where a lot of this is all systemic. You know, it goes back to that Willie Lynch syndrome where it was literally, we're going to pit the old ones against the young ones, the light skin against the dark skin, the women against the men. Mm-hmm. And I think we see that so prevalent today where there's like a clear division between our women and our men. And we got to put in the work to try to get that thing back on the right foot.
Speaking on that point that you made about the culture right now with the music, with social media and all that, nah, I don't. And look, I don't know about y'all time period at this age, but I can tell you right now, if you have even the idea that you might want to pursue something else, there is nothing but access and opportunity for you. Like literally, you can go on an app today. You can download an app. There's one, I believe it's called Bumble. Find somebody who you want to hook up with, and then boom, it's almost like Instacart for groceries. Like you could go find some stupid stuff to get into, and it is at your fingertips 24/7 all the time. So with that, it's like things have, to me, in my perception of how history has worked, I feel like right now we've got the extremes. It's like, well, if people, you had people who was just dirty, and I'm not talking about physically like they need to take a shower, but probably that too. But you got just dirty people have gone completely off the rails because they don't care about nobody else. It's what I want, how I feel right now.
Yeah.
But then going onto what kind of both of you were saying, one of the things is like when I'm thinking about, trying to do this in a healthy way and staying away from that whole comparison trap, because that's really what it is.
Yeah.
Is every time that there's some sort of situation where we gotta have a conversation about it or work through something, I always have to do that look in the mirror thing. It's like, even when you're if you're a dude who's scrolling through social media and you're thinking about all the females that you see on the timeline and what your life could be like with them instead of the person that you're with, typically, the thing is, just like if you've gotten fired from the last 5 jobs, the one thing that has stayed the same in the relationships that didn't work and the one thing that stayed the same in the jobs that you got fired from is you. So even if you go, all right, well, forget about her, I'm gonna go slide into this lady's DMs, you still bringing your trash with you.
Yeah.
Homie, you suck. Get that together first. And so I think, like you were saying, it's really important to look into that mirror and actually do some work. But then if you find somebody who's willing to also be working on themselves and then work on the relationship together, I think you are on the right track. Because we had a conversation, we had a conversation the other day, and I thought this was what Mike would call a teachable moment. She was saying what was it? We was having some issue with something, and she was pretty much saying like that's and I don't know if anybody's ever heard this, and I hope this is not too touchy. I don't think it is. But if you've ever said in your relationship that if you've ever thought that something that you and the other person is going through is solely and 100% a them problem, you need to fix you in this situation, in this scenario. What you did was wrong. You need to fix it. You're the problem. Now, if we're talking about infidelity, okay, that's one thing. But in most cases, that thing that you think is just a you problem, if you even think that there is a such thing as a you problem, then that means that two people don't work together. So if I have an issue with myself, right, two people becoming one, how could anything just be a you problem? Because if it's just a you problem, then I remove myself from any sort of responsibility, and I also cannot work on making the thing right. So therefore, it's 100% up to you. And if you don't do anything, this won't work. So if we're going to fast forward to a marriage, could there even be a you problem?
Good question. I'm going to answer it like this. When those situations come, both people should be doing the same thing. Both people should say, what do I need to change about myself to fix the situation? Okay. So to your point, in that way I say, I won't call it a you problem, but I guess where do you divide the line between where we have to personally deal with ourselves on something that might not be tied to the relationship per se, but impacted, you know what I'm saying? So that might be something, weight loss, okay? Me working out is, my wife can assist me and we can do it together, but it's gonna take me going down there and lifting the weights.
Yeah.
She can be supportive. So maybe that's where it becomes us, but individually, I got to make that decision to do it. So I don't know if I can really answer that question. I don't know if that's a you problem, but it's definitely something, a decision you got to make.
But see, the thing is, you being a leader, you know, there's a saying, attitude reflects leadership.
Yeah.
When you really walk down your path, your team is usually going to show signs that it's impacting them also. And what I was thinking about as you were talking is, like, with my wife in particular, I can ask my wife to do something till I'm blue in the face. She's gonna do what she feels like doing it. But when I really want her to do something is when I start doing it.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm like, look, babe, I need you to go. Like right now, for example, we're getting furniture for this house that we're setting up for traveling nurses. And I'm like, look, I got a million things. I kind of want you to lead, because that's like her area where, you know, the furnishing and stuff like that. And she's like, okay, I'll get to it. And instead of me keep getting frustrated, like, hey, did you find the furniture? What I had to do was, I'm like, all right, I may look at 2 items, like, very quickly, and then send them to her. And then what I was noticing is it was getting her started. And then she's like, oh, I mean, that's okay, but I don't really like that. How about this or XYZ?
Yeah.
Because now I got her started. I showed that I was invested, or even working out. It's like, if I go work, well, I can't use where my wife, that don't work with my wife, but let's stay on the furniture thing. So basically, if you get started, sometimes you invite your team to get started also. And it's funny because I was watching the Florida Gators documentary, Swamp Kings, on Netflix, and I thought it was pretty good. I see some people in the reviews, it was mixed reviews, but I thought it was pretty good. And it was a couple of those life lessons that I feel like you get in football. And one of the main things was do your job. Do your job. Trust that the man next to you is going to do his job. Okay? And going back to marriage is like, listen, as the head of the household, men, we got to do our job first. And if we bought right, we got the right woman alongside of us, we have to trust and give her the tools so that she can do her job properly. And we got to let her do it. Sometimes it may not always look the way we think it should look. That's another thing too.
Yeah.
Perspective.
Yeah.
You know, there are wives, but they grew up different. They come from different households. They come from different upbringing. They have different ways of doing it. That's another thing. Men, we have control issues.
Yeah.
And we'll say, well, we just making sure it's getting done. Or, well, you know, well, I need to go over there to make sure that. It's like, well, you the only person that's qualified to do that in the world.
Yeah.
It's really a control issue, and we gotta be true to ourselves and just relinquish some of that control and trust our people.
True that.
I think we run into issues in that situation right there. We run into issues, and this is how comparison kind of jumps in and destroys a relationship. I think it does it when you decide, and this is to both of your points, when you decide not to be a leader, when you decide not to look in the mirror, when you decide to stop taking responsibility for your part in the situation, then you open yourself up to the problem of, okay, now this thing can't be solved because I am unwilling to do anything to solve it. Good. You can't be a leader and not take responsibility. That just doesn't work. And so when you're in that situation and you start, say you are in that tough spot in the relationship, and this is the most vulnerable spot, when you're in that tough spot, and then you start looking out at this and what could be if they were this person or if they did this and that, that's when the comparison really starts to destroy things, because then it plants a seed in your mind. And then when that seed is planted and you're thinking about, well, and that problem never gets solved, that seed just continues to stay there. It's like, well, if she was more like Susie Q from down the street, or if she was more like Sister Jeanette from church, then, you know, this might be a little bit better. And it's like, oh, wait a minute, brother. She's never going to be Sister Jeanette from at the church. Just go ahead and get that out of your mind. And if you start looking at Sister Jeanette from the church too much, somebody gonna call you out, or you gonna make a mistake.
Yep.
Yeah.
Man.
So bringing this full circle, Martell, what are a couple takeaways that we can get to good brothers as we kind of wrap this thing up for the day?
I would say that, well, talking about, just going back over what we've already been saying in this conversation, comparison is a trap. Comparison is a trap. So in a relationship, like for me, one thing that I'm thinking about, I'm never comparing the person that I'm with to other people. I'm working with them as they are. And so if we're talking about buying right, I'm analyzing what things are just a part of them and what things that can be improved on. And are they willing? Do they have the willingness to lead themselves and improve it? If not, then I wouldn't be buying right to lock in a deal with this person for the rest of my life. That doesn't make sense. So bringing it full circle, when I have that issue, it's not the time for me to start comparing what they don't have to what someone else does have. It's time for me to really analyze what I do have with me right then in that moment, and see if we have anything that we can work on, see any adjustments that can possibly be made, and if there's a willingness to be made. But then in that situation, I also have to be a leader to myself, making sure that I'm doing the right things, because if I am not, then I can't with a sober mind analyze the situation as a whole, because I'm not even who I need to be. So I need to show up correct and then decide on, okay, is this happening, and is this going to map out to what is going to be fruitful? And if not, I can jump ship to another. I can jump ship because it's just not going to be right, or I can continue to work on the relationship if I did decide that I'm with someone who's willing to work on it. That's what I would say.
Gotcha. I think that's the bow on the present.
Yes, sir.
There we go.
Comparison is a thief of joy.
Comparison is the thief of joy. And hey, if you want to be around a group of fellas, you know this is going to come up. If you want to be around a group of fellas who are doing their best to lead themselves in a way that's going to be fruitful in their relationship, then you need to go ahead and press the link in this description for Men 2.0. I mean, we are around a solid group of fellas. We're not talking about, we are not in a group of fellas who are complaining about their wives. And just like on Mike's point, if you're around that group of fellas, you don't want to be, because that's just going to run you into issues. We're around a bunch of fellas who are continuously developing themselves, continuously working on themselves, leading in the areas that they can, and improving in the areas that they need to improve. And so if you want to be around a bunch of dudes who are going to give you wisdom on whatever situation you're in that could possibly help you to take your relationship, your life to the next level, then you want to be a part of Men 2.0. I mean, I can't say it enough. Men 2.0 is the place to be. Fellas, all hearts and minds?
Clear.
Yes, sir.
All right. With that being said, everybody, if you like this episode, press the video on your screen, and we will see y'all there.
Peace.